Let's talk about the business of the day as it relates to theater with your hosts, Darnelle Radford and Mitch Weiss. This is The Business of Theater, a working title. Mitch, I know we are looking for a working title, but we cannot name the podcast The Business of Theater. Ease on down the podcast.
Well, only if you sing it, and only if you sing it better than the TV commercial.
Ease on down the podcast.
There you go.
Ease on down the podcast.
Have you ever wanted to be the Scarecrow?
Michael Jackson's Scarecrow. He had a lot of energy.
Yes, he did. Unfortunately, also, and forgive me, folks, one of the worst movies ever made.
Yeah, I mean the quality felt like Sanford and Son the movie.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Let's add to that A Chorus Line was one of the worst movies ever made. Well, what else can we add to the category? By the way, Oklahoma, the original, 14 hours long, and if they sing one more verse of "Oh, What a Lovely Morning" at the beginning of that movie, I think as a child, I fell asleep in the opening number because nothing was happening on that stage, on the movie. So we have a long history of shows not making it, not doing well in their transition.
Yeah, we'll get into it. This is The Business of Theater, a working title. I'm Darnelle Radford.
I'm Mitch Weiss.
And let's get down to business. But first, a little bit of housekeeping. So this is episode 51 of our podcast. However, our international operations producer, Woodsy, let me know that we have been counting incorrectly. And so technically, we are in season 3 today. This is episode 1 of season 3, even though it's episode 51. And, now thinking about it, I can't believe we've been doing this for 3 seasons.
Isn't that amazing?
The funny thing about this is we've had 2 years of conversations, recorded conversations before we even went live on the podcast. So it's so interesting that we have so much content that has not been shared.
You think it's because you and I have opinions? You think I have a feeling it's what's made it so easy. When you love an industry that we're talking about so much, it is natural. We don't have to prepare, even if we do.
No, I mean, honestly, listeners, I'll let you in on a little secret. The way we prepare for the podcast is that we meet 30 minutes before we go live, and we talk about what is currently pressing, like what is standing out for us in the news and in the various feeds that we follow. And then we figure out a through line, and we have a conversation there. And so we had to get comfortable communicating with each other, which we've been doing for, I don't know, how long has it been? 9 years?
at least, who knows?
Something like that. So we've been doing it for a while. And so, when we started the podcast, we didn't have an exact direction, which is why we had a working title, because we were trying to figure out what the podcast will become. And I kept saying off recording that it will find itself. It will figure out what it wants to be.
But then we discovered why ruin a good thing? Unless we trip over it, we might as well keep making up stupid stuff, which I leave to you. Let's be clear. You come up with the most inane possible subtitles for this podcast, and I appreciate it.
It is informed by our conversation, which is, I think it's great to prep. Like it's my mindset of like, we sort of treat this as a call time
Mhm.
So our call time is normally 6 o'clock, and we don't get started till like 6:30 or maybe even later, and then we record for probably an hour. That is our conversation. But I think it's also cool for this episode, the first episode of season 1, to kind of look back on the fact that we've had all of these conversations, and it was tough getting started because at first we were still in we were kind of in the tail end of the pandemic. And so we were having those conversations. There were transitions that were going on. The farm was still up and running, but, was thinking differently about what its future is going to be. And then I'm still working with Theater Exile, and we were going through our pains and, and so on in the community, and the community was continuing to recover and come back from that. So we had great conversations on both sides, from the perspective of Broadway and the perspective of regional, at least from Philadelphia and being in the general region of Broadway, I guess.
And may I bring up, in looking back, if we were to go back to the first 10 episodes, to see if any of our predictions or our complaints or our suggestions, we're now 2 years past that, right? And looking at where Broadway and off-Broadway and nonprofit and regional theater is, the new normal that we absolutely, with all our hearts, believed had to come out of the pandemic has not happened.
No.
And that is something, that's the reason why I think our conversations are much more documented. They're much more, I'll even say, insightful, because we have seen predictions, not for the doom of theater. Come on. The theater's been through, not just the pandemic, but it got through 9/11. It's gotten through shutdowns for strikes, for union strikes. It's had blackouts in New York. The theater will figure it out because there's a value to it. What's striking us now is our prediction that prior to the pandemic, there were significant inherent problems with the non-profit developmental system of creating theater. When you go to Broadway, hey, if you can raise $20 million, you can put on your grandmother's stockings and you can open the show. It may close the next day, but then so do all these other shows that someone just put on the stage. But they were able to raise the money. So, but the quality shows, some of them make it to Broadway, but the quality came out of the regions, came out of people just trying to create art, and then somebody with money or with an institution took it the next step. That fell apart because it was falling apart before the pandemic. And here we are today, season 3, and God, I want to be positive about this, but it's hard. Where are those? Come on, people with money who are listening to this. We need you to step up.
I want to say real quick that if there was a musical or a play about grandma's stockings, it should just be called Knickers.
Why? No, but unfortunately, that starts with a K, and that's much too late in the alphabet for it to be a hit.
Oh, true.
There's cabaret. There's Chicago, all C's, chorus line.
A pair of knickers.
Cat, there you go. A pair of knickers. Personally, I like the title Grandma's Stockings. That might make me go.
Yeah. Well, knickers is a dated term, and so there's got to be a grandma in here. It's a pair of knickers. Or
Knickerbockers, we sell beer. By the way, totally off left field. How sick am I of watching? Do you remember the day? This is just before, even up to the pandemic. Not only could you not take a drink to your seat in a Broadway theater, it had to be in a paper cup. You had to drink it in the lobby before you got there. The idea was, if you spill it, cleaning the seat especially in time for the next performance, is very difficult. Cleaning the carpeted floor is awful. So the idea was we don't want messy food or liquids making it to the seat. I went to a show last night, to be unnamed. They gave them glass cups with no lid, and I'd say half my row was holding wine in a glass cup.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, if that breaks glasses everywhere,
Yeah.
and if they spill it, and if they're drunk, what the hell is going on?
You know, we saw Dreamgirls at McCarter Theater, and they had special drinks, and they were in containers with open lids, and their theater has a carpet, and there are no like places to put your drink or anything. I was like, wow, there's no lid on this, and it's open. And, I don't think anybody spilled anything, but it was like, wow, they're just really trusting us here.
Yeah. Well, trust is the wrong word. Let's tell a fun story. There was a Beach Boys musical on Broadway, and I was subbing for the house manager. And during Act 1, not looking drunk, but obviously a man in his 60s who had had a bit too much to drink at dinner, threw up on the woman and her fur coat sitting in front of him in the orchestra in the middle of the act. Now, the person he threw up on was on her 10th year anniversary. Her husband had spent, according to him, $8,000 to get into New York to be in the correct hotel room and to bring her to see a show about her favorite music group. They were not happy. Meanwhile, the man got past the ticket takers. Usually they're on the lookout for people who may be drunk because he wasn't acting drunk. And the drunken man, his wife, grabbed him and they ran out of the theater. So now no one is responsible except the house manager, of course. That's me. So that happens, and that's before you're allowed to bring drinks to your seat. I don't understand it. I understand money's important to everyone, but give me a break. And there shouldn't be a 4-year-old and younger.
Give me a break, yeah. Give me a break, 'cause I sure need one. Yeah. I finally know where I belong. Darnell Carter.
We just lost half our audience. Thank you, Darnell.
Come on, that was a deep cut.
It was, and I was bitching, and I apologize. There's something, you want general people to come in and general people, listen to me, and enjoy theater. Absolutely. That doesn't mean they have to have noisy candy and open drinks at their seat. It just doesn't work that way.
Well, I think they realize that, the problem is we're propped up by diehards, but we need everybody else to engage in our work as well. And so in order to do that, we have to think like sporting events where they add all these things to keep you in your seat, and so that's why we have to allow these things. I think, and it is interesting because like you shouldn't have to teach people how to engage in theater, but you do
but that's not the way to do it. That's all I'm saying. I get it. I want the Disney audience to bring their families. I'm happy with that. But and funny enough, there was one day when I was working on a chorus line, the ushers came running up to me and they said, "Someone's eating in the balcony." And I ran upstairs, and a family had brought in a bucket of fried chicken. And while they're watching the show and enjoying it tremendously, they are not munching away on a fried chicken. And we had to just calmly say, wow, you're not supposed to eat in the middle of the show in your seats here. Oh, okay. They were very nice about it.
They were like, "Do you want the breast?" Is the breast, you say?
It smelled great, by the way. It really,
sure it did.
Yeah. But and by the fact that they then said no
We're
problem.
like, this is that hot chicken, and we had to get it.
As long as the audience understands if they are asked to put something
Would it
away.
have been acceptable if it was chopped beef or a BEC or a slice?
No. Why are you asking?
Because those are quintessential New York.
Or hot dogs off the street, right? It's not a sporting event. That's the difference. And right. And that's the same thing. They have certain shows are loud, very loud, and for those, because of the music or whatever reason, and there's a different decorum expected. If in the audience, if you can still hear the show while somebody's talking to their neighbor. But when you have a quiet show, you expect the decorum. You're in the theater. We're here, and there are other people sitting next to you. I'm sorry, I'm going off. I'm sure a lot of people agree with me, but
no, yeah, I've definitely been in the theater where, it's usually a jukebox musical where the energy is so high that it's hard to get the audience back, settled. Particularly after intermission, sometimes it's like there's this whole crowd over here. It cannot get settled. It's clear that there's a group. Like I remember, seeing one of the jukebox musicals at Walnut, and there was a group off house right that was taking a bit to get situated. Same thing happened at Hell's Kitchen. We were in the balcony. There was a group up there, and it was taking them a minute to get situated. At the same time, I'm happy that they're all engaged in this, but it's like.
But interesting, and this is where knowing your history helps. We just, and you've seen it also, we just saw Merrily We Roll Along, a wonderful revival. What they have there is the old-fashioned overture at the top of the show and entr'acte starting act 2. It's enough positive, high-energy music that everyone gets to keep their energy and still settle down. And by the time the scene starts, we're all back in the mood of the show. Every show on Broadway, every musical used to have that. And then when we got into the rock era, they said, let's just start with the show.
Yeah.
But having seen that the other night, I went, it's still a good idea.
Yeah, because it's letting you know we're about to get into this world, and the overture is a collection of all the songs,
right?
All the elements.
It gives you the mood. It sets you up. It gives you time to say, where am I? Oh, I better put my coat away. I better turn my phone off, whatever you're supposed to do. Or I got to talk to my Aunt Mabel and say, are you okay before the show starts? And,
unwrap your candy during this overture.
Thank you. which nobody does. And why do they sell those candies? Sell different candy.
And it's also, a lot of shows open without a curtain rising or opening. And so it just starts like, I do, on the one hand, I liked that about Rent, like the cast walks out and now there's a visual to sort of get situated and it doesn't start right away, but they come out. And so it's a thing, but yeah, that whole structure.
Right.
And so in regional theater, there's always like this toss up between, do we do a live curtain speech or is it pre-recorded? I think the pre-recordeds are more fun. They get to actually produce them and think more intently about them. They kind of are in the theme of the show. And so I like them. They're probably easier to make sure you're getting everything you need to say out. But
different shows,
different choices.
Right. It's also the theme of the show. Sometimes it's, if you're seeing Spamalot, that's one kind of opening, turn your phones off. They can have fun with it. If you're doing a very serious drama, you might not want to send people away from being prepared to move into the location of the drama. So it's good. And the same thing with overtures and entr'actes. Rent doesn't have to have one, but it does have a transition period of how you get people to transition Now I'm watching a show and I'm in their world.
Yes.
And the shows that ignore that, I think, have trouble.
Well, speaking of Merrily, since you mentioned it, I am so excited, and currently, as we speak, pre-sale has begun for Forbidden Broadway on Broadway. Merrily, We Stole a Song.
I know, it's hopefully very funny. I think it's been 30 years that some version of that show has been going on. And D'Alessandri is his name. I hope I don't get it wrong. He's written every single one of them, and every year he's changed the show. It ran off Broadway for decades, and I've seen 3 or 4 of them, and every one of them made me laugh out loud. So the idea that he's finally getting a chance to be on Broadway, it makes me very happy. I have I don't know how he's going to top himself.
Yeah, but I hope it does very well too.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to it because I have not experienced Forbidden Broadway live. I've listened to many of the soundtracks, and there are moments that I really enjoy. But yeah, this will be nice. So I'm not in this pre-sale. I think I just signed up for maybe an access link. So perhaps maybe I can buy tickets this weekend. But it starts previews in July, and so that'll be a nice summer thing.
Very smart. The Tonys are over. All the shows that are going to close because they didn't get Tonys will close by around July 4th, July 7th, and there's going to be a slew of them. We have, this is a, how shall we put it? The crop this year of theater, and it's happened before, but it's following a pandemic, and we still only have 70 or 80% of our audience back. Who's going to go to all of these new shows? And I don't understand business people who have $20 million to lose, why they don't consider when they're opening the show. I get it. They want to be part of the Tonys. But you know what? 18 new shows in 6 weeks. The Tony voters are going to hate you. Whenever it doesn't matter how good you are. They're going to go, I like the show I saw 3 weeks ago. I'm tired now. And that's going to be the end. So, and let's talk about, because this is on our list, revivals.
Yeah.
If something like Merrily We Roll Along is a new show, those of us who saw the original flop, and it was a flop. It just did not work. This is joyous. And by joyous, I don't mean it's a fun topic. I mean, it's Stephen Sondheim. The man has got sad and happy in the same note, right? It's always half and half with him. It's always gray, nothing black and white. And this show follows that. But wow, did they save a show. So to me, when you revive something, to give me, and Oklahoma did the same thing. It was a whole new take on Oklahoma. If you're just going to revive it, I don't care. I understand there are people who've never seen it, and that's great. Maybe that's what Lincoln Center should be doing every year. They should be our national theater, bring back the classics. Someone should do it. But on Broadway, competing with new shows, I'm sorry, unless Company made a whole change. They changed the sex of the leading actor. So they were trying something new. All of this is good if you're going to bring back something. That makes a revival. Other than that, I'm tired of the old shows. They need saving.
So do you think, unless there is a change, you're for a revival that has a change, that doesn't feel like the last one, and we're not just doing it because it's been 20 years.
The key word to this, and I know there are people who disagree with these, that's okay. The key word is theater is a living being. It's alive. So to resurrect it out of the grave, to show us, sets don't look the same in 1946 as we do lights. We have computerized lights. That started with a chorus line in 1976. They didn't exist before then. We didn't have microphones on a stage in a musical until 1970s. I think Promises, Promises was the first. That may have been 1969, and that was an experiment. Everyone had to scream out their song. If you're in the back row, you barely heard the lyrics of anything. So things change. So if you're going to do South Pacific, or which wonderful show, great history, but make it speak to 2024, whatever that means to you, the director, or to you, the producer. Why are you doing this? Now, a national theater, if we had one, and we don't, may be what Lincoln Center is trying to do when they do all these revivals of My Fair Lady in South Pacific and King and I. But I'll be honest with you, they're not so impressive. I feel like I'm seeing a stodgy old piece that I think would be exciting if somebody else brought something new to it. So, my opinion. Okay, Mitch, shut up. Is that going to be a new subtitle? The Business of Theater. Mitch, shut up.
No.
Oh.
We need your voice. I think you make good points, and it's all food for thought, and we just have to think about it because if we're struggling to get people into these spaces to experience the work, we have to think about what are we putting out? Is it a draw, or is it and if you're making if you're doing a revival or whatever you're bringing there, we need to understand why it's coming here. There needs to be more conversation around that. So I do feel like the shows that do a lot of build up and give you all that information, whether you need it or not, it's it's good because it gives us more information. So when we walk into the theater, we're not completely blind. We saw a girl from the North Country recently here when it came to the Forest Theater, and there were a lot of people who came to see the show that were like, I don't know much about this.
Right.
And we got the press release and we still didn't know much about it. So it's just kind of interesting. I remember when it was on Broadway, but I still didn't know much about it. And so, yeah, I feel like we need more story to kind of understand where this came from and why.
Now you bring up another problem, which I know every press agent in New York will agree with me. We used to have a whole bunch of newspapers and magazines, and the job of the press agent was get us as much coverage, talk to the stars, talk to the writers, explain the story, let people know why they might want to buy a ticket. We do not have those. Not only do most of those magazines and newspapers don't exist anymore, but the ones that do exist have fired their critics, have gotten rid of their reporters because for some reason, people go to the theater, don't read the newspaper.
Yes. I do read the playbill.
Well, I do, but usually after the fact. I try to, I make sure I know if there's anyone in there I know. But then after that, I want to be surprised afterwards and say, who was that amazing performer? And I'll look it up and say, okay, now that's in my head. Oh, how, some of the articles in Playbill are wonderful. But we do, the online presence is a competition. By the way, and just to, again, it's an old story, but the New York Times, which used to be the most powerful theater newspaper or any form of press in the country, they, even in the past, allowed every show on Broadway to have one article before it opened. One in the arts and leisure section. So the press agent had to be very careful about what that article was going to be about. And it was usually the week before opening night. So if you had 3 shows opening in 1 week, the New York Times was, if you're best friends with the editor there, your show may get the article. Or else it will be moved to a different day instead of the Sunday New York Times. That could kill a show. And the point is now we don't even have that. I mean, the New York Times will give you an article, but we don't have Long Island suburban people reading the Sunday New York Times.
Yeah, this is a good segue into we were talking about digital marketing and how we need to find like new ways to get this word out, and because journalism is somewhat drying up, and we have to think about other ways to get to place this information somewhere for people to find it, the people who want it to find it. And sometimes it takes a little bit to build its traction. Like we're not all obsessed with Hell's Kitchen. I am. Like, it came out today. Yeah. Like yesterday they promoted a new video is coming out tomorrow, and I'm like right there. And this morning at 9:00, I watched it twice, and then Matt woke up, my partner, and I made him watch it, and I was like, I've already watched it twice.
I see, and while I like the song, which is in the show Hell's Kitchen, it was videotaped in my building.
Yeah, in the Manhattan Plaza.
Right, Manhattan Plaza, which is what Hell's Kitchen, the show, where it takes place. It's almost its own character. And I don't want to say anything good or bad about Hell's Kitchen. I enjoyed it tremendously. It's not a perfect show, but who cares? I enjoyed it. And other people adore it. So, I'm going to leave it at that. And my review is me. The thing that you're bringing up is the only way to promote a musical nowadays to have music videos. I will refer back to Pippin, which was the first Broadway musical to have a television commercial. And it wasn't that they had the commercial, it's what they did with it. There was almost no talking or singing. It was a dance number with Ben Vereen and two other dancers, and they just let them do this little odd dance and then said, Pippin playing at the Imperial Theater. And that sold tickets to a show that really wasn't that great. And it lasted for 5 years because of that TV commercial. TV commercials in those days were expensive, and no one else had tried it. Now we may be at the point where you cannot have a musical on Broadway without a YouTube video out there. Merrily We Roll Along. They have 3 of them out, and they're wonderful.
Yeah, I have not watched Franklin Shepherd Inc. yet. I'm so excited.
Well, I think it just came out today.
Yes, I know. So, but it's linked in our show notes, and I can't wait to watch it. But I know when I saw the production, I loved Franklin Shepherd Inc.
Yeah,
Daniel Radcliff just nails it. He's wonderful in this, and it was like that standing ovation you get later in the show. Mm-hmm. We got it then. And and I was just like, I think this could go on for a long time if we don't all remember that there's a whole lot of show left. But it was just so great. Yeah.
And we don't want to stick with Merrily, but it was one of those really nice evenings of theater where I walked out with a giant smile, knowing it was a sad show, but it was a big smile on my face. Yes. I had seen something. I had a great evening. And that will only last till July. They're closing it on purpose. They're selling out, so it's not money. We're going to see what else. There won't be a lot of shows on Broadway this summer.
I really hope they film it and sell it to Disney.
Yeah. Well, interesting enough, I'm hoping Kimbo, which also closes at the end of this month, which mixed. A lot of people I know weren't in love with it. But those fans of the show, like myself, I thought it was a very special show. And I know some people who have paid, to see the show 10 times. It's one of those super fans that this show means something to their life.
Yeah.
So I haven't heard back. I've written to the people I know in the producing office to say, were you smart enough to videotape the show? Are you going to do a special on PBS? Is it going to YouTube? Are you selling it? What's going on? Because this show should not be forgotten.
Broadway HD.
Well, and that's okay, but they haven't announced that that's happening yet.
Yeah. I hope so.
Yeah. And I'm going back. I'm going to see it. This will be my third time seeing it. I'm not a super fan. But if it's not videotaped, I want this emblazoned in my head. There are moments in this that just are special. So along with that, we have a bunch of shows we haven't seen yet that are all going to open in the next few weeks. I feel bad for the Tony voters. They have to see all of them. And some of them are crap. We know that. That always happens.
Yes. But I'm thinking about the other videos that we came across within the past couple of weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, yesterday, Kaleidoscope became available. It was very cute. And The Outsiders has a couple of videos out too.
Right. And I wish the show well. I mean, the reviews that I know, I haven't seen it yet. It's not a typical Broadway musical, and that should be okay. And that's the problem, is that what part of not being your average Hello Dolly, let's have a boisterous time through the whole thing, doesn't allow a show to succeed. I'm hoping it will. But the videos I had trouble with because they take place in the real world rather than on a stage. So I now get the feeling of what the movie would look like, but not what the stage show looks like. So even though I'm going to see the show, I'm walking in not really knowing what I'm going to get to see. And you brought that up. You said you really need to have a little idea of what you're walking into before you're going to spend the big bucks. So I think they made a mistake that way, even though the people I know who have seen it have said wonderful things. So we'll hope.
Yeah, it's also, it gives the audience, the patrons, a chance to be ambassadors for the show, especially if they're interested in it and they dig deep and they find out a lot of information. Like, my partner, for example, he can spout off about so many elements of the show that have nothing to do with the performance particularly, but it's like how certain actors became signed on and like who the music director, he knows all that stuff. And he breaks down like, they were originally in this and do that. And I'm like, where do you get all that from? Mm-hmm. You need a podcast on my network. That's what you need. He's so good at it.
And while we're mentioning it, Seth Rudetsky, who seems to know which actors went to the toilet during Act 2. I mean, yes. Seth has his own, not just podcasts, he has his YouTube videos. During the pandemic, he kept most of us alive. He had plays in the house. He had stars in the house, which were YouTube videos, which were allowed, which the pandemic allowed to be done remotely. But the man is a wealth of knowledge of all of these stars and how shows were created. I'm very proud that I went to the same college he did. Yay, Seth and Oberlin. But he's somebody that you can just sit there, and he does his own shows, by the way, but you can sit down and listen for 5 hours and still go, how could he know this? How is it possible? So we're not those people, although I can certainly tell you some secrets from the past, but that would get me in trouble. That's all I can say. I'm afraid to get in too much trouble with the stuff I know.
I bought the audiobook of Musical Theater for Dummies by Seth Rudetsky, and it's a fun read because you either love or you hate Seth Rudetsky's voice, but he has such energy. So it's a fun listen. And I was there was a chapter I was on where he had talked to Audra McDonald about this high kick she did at the Barrymore. I mean, not at the Barrymores, at the Tony Awards. Now I'm drawing a blank on the production. But she had surgery recently, and so she couldn't normally kick that high, and she surprised herself when she did she did this kick. And but he told the story of how he asked her that.
It's adrenaline. It's all I'll tell you, even when I was in college, we went on tour with a musical, and we were here in New York, and the lead actor, who was on stage all through the musical, 2.5 hours, right? There was an intermission, luckily. Just before the show, he started throwing up and he had the runs. He went on stage, he did the entire act, ran off stage straight to the bathroom, was in there the entire intermission, throwing up again, and still with the runs, put his costume back on, ran out, and did all of Act 2 with no issues. And then after the show, we almost had to take him to the hospital. He was so dehydrated.
Wow.
But that's the kind of adrenaline, you get from these performers. I don't know how they do it.
And it's tough. Like, that's where The Show Must Go On came from, because there's so many people who bought tickets. Like, we can't even begin to think about how to refund or exchange all these tickets. The show must go on.
Well, and stories that are worth telling. And I went out to dinner the other day with some wonderful retired managers, Broadway managers. So all the stories started flowing. But I worked on a show called On the Waterfront, which was based on the movie. And in the show, James Gandolfini from The Sopranos, he had a featured role in the show. This is before The Sopranos. In scene 3, on a night where there were critics in the audience, he had a heart attack on stage. We brought the curtain down. We got him in an ambulance. His understudy went on. Nothing stopped. Luckily, of course, he lived, because you all saw him in The Sopranos. In addition to that, the same night, there was a rainstorm, a giant rainstorm here in New York. And there was, for some reason, I don't know how this happens, the Broadway theater we were in had a leak in the ceiling. And the rain was pouring on top of 4 seats in the center of the orchestra where critics were supposed to sit. And we had a sold-out house. So my job was find a new place for the critics, kick out the people who are in the seats you want them to be in, and try to make sure they're not angry. And then we had the heart attack on stage, all in one night. But the show goes on. And, of course, we got lots of publicity for both the rainstorm and the heart attack. It made front page of newspapers the next day. And, of course, that's all we care about, right? Publicity. Yeah. And then the show closed 3 days later because it got rotten reviews. So that's the end of that.
Yeah. So from a regional standpoint, I feel like we are trying to retire that phrase. The show must go on, because we got to be realistic about people's well-being and so on. Yeah,
absolutely true.
So before we get out of here today, I want to tell you that we've been following a blog,
and an author, a
blog and an author on. We found him on LinkedIn first.
I found him on Arts Journal.
Oh, okay, Arts Journal. You found him on Arts Journal. I followed him on LinkedIn. He has a column called Scene Change.
It's a book. Same as his book.
The book. Yes, it's a column first. The column's called Scene Change.
We're trying to help him sell his book.
Yes. His name is Alan Harrison, and we've been following him, and he has harsh truths about the nonprofit as a business model. And, in a way, like it sounds at a moment sarcastic, but at the same time, I do call it hard truths, because it's like, this is some serious food for thought. We do have to think about this, because you may not agree with everything he has to say, but you walk away going, yeah, that is something we have to think about, though.
And the reason we're following him, and so many people do, is because he writes intelligently about it, thoughtfully. He has some real experience managing nonprofit. And this is, as we were talking, hey, see how our podcast beginning, middle, and end comes together. As we were talking about at the beginning, the new normal that we were expecting and hoping for coming out of the pandemic, he's the one who's saying it should be here by now. And this is what it should look like. And why is everyone fighting it that shouldn't be fighting it? Who are the people who are stopping the new normal from happening? So we get a chance to ask him some really deep questions that perhaps I hope hasn't already been asked of him, because we have our opinions too.
Yeah. So the book is called Scene Change: Why Today's Nonprofit Arts Organizations Have to Stop Producing Art and Start Producing Impact. And so in our next podcast, we'll be chatting with Alan Harrison. And there's a link in our show notes to learn more about Alan Harrison and to get the book. But we're looking forward to this chat because we've only had one other guest, one of the playwrights from the farm we met with earlier in the beginning of the podcast. And so we want to have more guests soon. And this is a great start to season 3. So we're looking forward to that.
And one last advertisement besides the book, The Business of Broadway, which is still, I'm thrilled to say, still selling well and being used at universities. But now we have explained what the farm is on a website called We Grow Theater, spelled ER at the end, .com, to try to let you know how we're trying to be the new normal. And we've got 9 products. I mean, if we're going to talk about cereal and theater in the same breath, that we're looking for people to help us get it to the next stage, which may not be Broadway, but these shows deserve an audience, and there are many ways to do it. And luckily, we don't need $20 million, so that's not the point. But check it out. See what your opinion is. Be in contact. We're working with some amazing people, and we're going to be doing a lot of free performances this year. So you can let us know if you want to come to some of them in the New York area. Okay. The equity will not let us videotape this because then we have to pay everybody a fortune. So this is live or nothing.
Not that we don't want to pay them, but the industry is still bouncing back, and we still have, jargon, blah, 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 yada, yada, the thing you've heard from every artist.
Well, and let me be clear, the farm pays everyone except me. Except me.
Yeah.
But they pay everyone who
we're not allowed to pay
works on these shows.
In the bylaws.
Yeah. Bylaws of my birth certificate.
Yes. But that's The Business of Theater, a working title. I'm Darnelle Radford.
I'm Mitch Weiss.
And we will see you at the theater.
Yay!
Thank you for listening. Tune in next time for another episode of The Business of Theater, a working title, with Darnelle Radford and Mitch Weiss. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you listen to podcasts. Share the podcast with a friend, colleague, or give us some social media love. This podcast is an Emory production. Visit us online at em3ry.com/TBOT. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at em3ryotm.